I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Jeremy Kasper. Jeremy is a research faculty member, research professor with the Alaska Center for Energy and Power, where he directs the Alaska Hydrokinetic Energy Research Center for us. Jeremy's background is in oceanography. Prior to coming to UAF, he was a postdoc at Woods Hole. And I have this recollection, Jeremy, when you interviewed with us to take on this position. You were a little bit of an unusual hire coming into an engineering program with a background in oceanography. But I remember your wife has her family is from here in Fairbanks, and you have children yourself. And I remember seeing when we had dinner that evening, and we were just talking informally, I could see that she was really pushing Jeremy. She's like, we've got to move back to Fairbanks. I want to come home. And that's the kind of people that we really want to cultivate, that we want to spend time to develop, that we want to give a chance to. And Jeremy has really exceeded every single expectation that we've ever had. You've done an amazing and fantastic job with the Alaska Hydrokinetic Energy Research Center, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your presentation today. So thank you, Jeremy.
Following up on some of the themes that have been brought up tonight by President Johnson and Dan and Gwen. So basically, getting applied knowledge out into the community as quickly as possible. And for anybody in the room who knows me from graduate school, quick was not my modus operandi. So this is a little bit different for me, but I think you'll see it's worthwhile. So Marcia, could you forward the slide? Next slide. Okay. So I'm going to give an introduction. AHERC, the Alaska Hydrokinetic Energy Research Center, we're part of ACEP. So we follow on ACEP's motto. And basically, ACEP wants to see Alaska leading the way in innovative production, distribution, and management of energy. So what does that mean in concrete terms? First and foremost, we want to see ACEP and AHERC as a resource for the communities. For those of you who have been in the state for a long time, there's a history of agencies coming to the state, putting research projects together. They sit on the tundra for 6 months and they work, and the agency goes away, and all that knowledge goes away with them. And that's what we don't want to happen. When the project ends, we're still going to be here, and you can still call us. The organic Rankine cycle generator that's in Tok now is a perfect example of that. That was tested in the ACEP labs, moved off to Tok, and now they're using it to basically recapture waste heat from their generators. And they call us if they have a question about it. Specifically, they call Dave, who's in the back there. Also, utilizing local resources wherever practical. That includes hydrokinetics, so I'll tell you what hydrokinetics is in a minute here. But Senator Murkowski brought up the example of the Barrel gas field. That's an excellent example as well. You basically use what you have on hand, and biomass is another excellent example. And then, first and foremost, experience gained solving Alaska's energy challenges is exportable. So we can develop this knowledge in-state and then basically enable the people to use it, take it, and develop intellectual property or economic, for their economic interests. Can you go forward there? So, following up on that theme, we're really supporting statewide economic development. The comparative advantages that Alaska has, first, we have very high costs of fossil fuel-based diesel generation here. So many don't see that as an advantage, but what that means is we have to come up with unique solutions to reduce those costs of energy. So in places like Kotzebue, Kodiak, Nome, Cordova, there's a lot of places that I can run off names, but we have very high penetration renewables. So Kodiak is up to, I think, about 95% baseload renewable energy. So that's wind and small-scale hydro. Cordova is similar. As a result of that high penetration, diesel off is commonplace. So basically what that means is that they actually are able to turn their diesel generators off instead of idling them. So in idling, basically you're losing efficiency. When it's diesel off, you're very efficient, and it's really the best way to go. The other thing that makes sense in Alaska, because of those difficult to extract and transport fossil fuels, is niche technologies such as low-temp geothermal. Nome is considering adopting a low-temp geothermal system right now. Chena Hot Springs has one. And then also hydrokinetics, and that's what I'll be talking about here now. slide. So this is an image from Eagle, Alaska, and this was really a pioneering project in a lot of ways. This was a 25 kW kilowatt hydrokinetic turbine that was installed in the Yukon River in 2010. And it actually powered the native village of Eagle for approximately 2 months. So it was a really, really big project, and there were a lot of things that went well. Some things didn't go well. Many of you have spent time on Alaska's rivers. This image might look familiar to you. Basically, this is a bunch of trees that accumulated on the barge that the turbine was mounted in the middle of the river. So commonplace, it accumulated on the barge. There were mooring lines. Trees accumulated there as well. And this is actually really where AHERC, the Hydrokinetic Energy Research Center, got our start. Down in that lower right corner there is the solution that AHERC came up with for protecting devices from debris. It looks pretty simple, but basically it's a V that's put out in the middle of the river. Logs hit it. There's a piece on the front that rotates, and the logs go around. So it's this sort of practical solution that AHERC really is really trying to get out with the community. Next slide, please, there. So why hydrokinetic energy in Alaska? So favorable economics, well, high cost of diesel, basically. Abundant resources. If you look at a map of Alaska, you'll see that there's coastline. There's a whole lot of it. Compare that to the rest of the U.S., and you see we have much more tides and waves. And then wherever there's not a village on the coastline, they're typically located on rivers. So you got rivers, tides, and waves. So very abundant resources. And there's also an extremely supportive funding environment. So the state has granted a capital improvements project to ACEP a few years ago. AEA, the Alaska Energy Authority, has invested heavily in this area. UAF has as well. Federal support is actually quite considerable in this area as well. Denali Commission, a local federal agency, Department of Energy. And this supportive funding environment has really allowed Alaska to make a lot of progress quickly. And so in a lot of ways, we're much further along than other places in the lower 48. And that support leads to leveraging opportunities. So a lot of funding agencies basically require you to bring in non-federal funds, and they will match that in some way or another. So that actually allowed us to get a substantial grant from the Murdoch Trust for developing some of this infrastructure. So the end result is that outside entities are engaging Alaskans for their expertise. Myself and my colleague are subject matter experts for a committee developing resource standards for this area. UAF and UAA are both actively engaging and training engineers. Companies are actively seeking out Alaska test facilities. So in the past 5 years, there have been 5 successful deployments. Ocean Renewable Power Company has now been successfully operating in Economies for the past 2 years. Oceana tested with UAF in Nenana for the past 2 summers. That APT project, the Eagle project, that was quite successful as well. That was in 2010. And there was a project in Ruby as well. And then Boschma Researching, they tested in Economies as well. So the end result is that Alaskans are gaining experience with these technologies. ORPC, Ocean Renewable Power Company, they're now pursuing projects in South America. Basically, that was enabled by that debris diversion technology. UAF is pursuing long-term deployments to answer some of the economic questions surrounding this and long-term where questions that haven't been addressed. Oceana was they were basically able to prove their technology in Alaska because of this knowledge that's been gained. And a broad spectrum of groups are participating. Marcia, can you do the next one? So this final slide is really the conclusions and the acknowledgments. You can see there's a whole range of companies and entities that are interested in Alaska. These are all companies that we work with directly. ABS Alaska has business here in Fairbanks, Denali Commission Federal Agency, ORPC, mentioned their Avionic project. And then down in this list here, there's a whole different set of companies, and that's basically Marine Services who are starting to work with us to support this research, and they're basically developing the knowledge that they can take elsewhere and support these projects. So it's really developing that knowledge-based economy, and that's really what we want to see. And that's it. Thank you.